I'll call to order the Subcommittee on Readiness of the House Armed Services Committee. I want to welcome everybody and thank you for being here today with us for the Readiness hearing on the U.S. Transportation Command Fiscal Year 2017 Readiness Posture. This is the only hearing in front of this committee by TRANSCOM, and it has been 2 years since we've had the opportunity for the Transportation Command to present its readiness posture. In the past 3 months, the service has testified on increased readiness risks due to reduced investments in installation infrastructure, training, and equipment. Today, I look forward to hearing how the Transportation Command's budget request enables a readiness recovery plan and where we continue to take risk. I would like to welcome all of our members and our distinguished Air Force expert. This morning we have with us General Darren McDew, U.S. Air Force Commander at United States Transportation Command, distinguished VMI graduate. Thank you for testifying today. We look forward to your thoughts and insights on these important issues. The purpose of this hearing is to clarify Transportation Command's posture to address readiness priorities, mitigation strategies, and to gather more detail on the current and future impacts of these decisions on operations and training. Once again, I want to thank our witness for participating in our hearing today, and I look forward to discussing these important topics. And now I'd like to turn to our ranking member, Madeline Bordallo, for any remarks that she might have upon her return from Guam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for calling this hearing today, and General McDew, I welcome you and your entourage. I'm glad that we're able to hold this meeting, and I thank you for being here and for your service to our nation. Transportation Command, as a functional combatant command, plays an integral role in the central planning and the execution for the movement of our forces and their equipment. As the only command with operational requirements on each of the 7 continents, TRANSCOM is asked to carry out land, sea, and air mobility missions around the world. It enables our military to project force in a timely and an efficient manner in response to both planned and unforeseen contingency operations. We have heard from several of the services and combatant commands already this year about the funding unpredictability levied by sequestration and years of continuing resolutions. So I hope that you help us better understand how these fiscal conditions have affected readiness within TRANSCOM, and where our committee and Congress as a whole can stop the damage and begin to repair our force. I thank you again for being here today, General, and we look forward to hearing from you. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Bordallo. General McDew, we'll go to you for your opening statement, and want you to know, too, that your written statement will be entered into the record.
Thank you, Chairman Whitman. And since you opened it up, a hearty Raw Virginia Mill. I just sort of Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Bordallo, I hope I didn't butcher that, ma'am, and distinguished members of this committee. It is an honor to be with you today representing the men and women of the United States Transportation Command. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, and I'd like to thank you for the unwavering support you give to the men and women who serve this mighty nation. I value the time I get to speak to you, and I would like to start by highlighting a true American hero with whom I've had the pleasure to serve. My senior enlisted leader, Chief Master Sergeant William W. Turner. Bill enlisted in July of 1986 in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and after 30 years of faithful service, this impeccable leader, this airman, his wife Stacy, and his children Reagan, Tyler, Haley, and JC are retiring in May. It's a tough thing for him to do. Chief Turner is a true American hero who has served with distinction, participating in contingency operations around the globe, including 9 deployments in support of Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. He deserves all the respect and appreciation our nation can possibly bestow, and he's emblematic of those men and women I represent today. But Bill Turner will be sorely missed, and he stands right behind me there. As I appear before you today, I assure you that those men and women that he represents in U.S. Transportation Command stand ready to deliver this nation's objectives anywhere at any time. I am in awe every day at what its members are capable of, and I am proud to serve next to them. I am confident our organization is ready to respond when our nation calls. However, there are several trends that concern me. First, the current pace of today's operations requires the full effort of our non-mobilized air refueling and airlift fleets. Should the need arise to respond elsewhere in the world, the mobility resources required could exceed existing capacity. Additionally, I'm concerned about our ability to operate in increasingly contested environments, including the cyber domain, where nearly 90% of our traffic flows on unclassified networks to and from our commercial providers. Finally, we must remain vigilant and meet the long-term recapitalization needs of tomorrow. Highest among these priorities are the development of a viable, strategic Sealift recapitalization plan and the on-time delivery of the KC-46 Alpha. To address these concerns, I have established the following priorities for the command: ensuring today's readiness while advocating for tomorrow's capabilities, advancing our cyber domain capabilities, evolving to remain relevant in tomorrow's world, and championing an innovative workforce. These priorities balance today's readiness while ensuring our focus remains clearly on the future. In closing, I'm committed to working closely with Congress and the services to retain the flexibility we require, while partnering in and out of DoD to ensure we're always ready to deliver the nation's objectives in time of need. Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Bordallo, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you again for your time and your support to U.S. Transportation Command and our total force, and I stand ready for your questions.
Thank you, General McDew. I appreciate your opening statement and your perspective on both the opportunities and challenges there before TRANSCOM. I wanted to begin by exploring the challenges that TRANSCOM faces in the cyber realm. And you spoke to those, and that you are in a unique situation versus other COCOMs and even other elements of our nation's military in the interconnectivity between your systems and systems of the industry and systems of customers, and how that has to be addressed, obviously, in today's threat world. Give us your perspective on what, first of all, TRANSCOM is doing in addressing those threats, and then secondly, what type of support are you getting from U.S. Cyber Command? And more specifically, do they understand the variety of threats that you face because of the uniqueness of your systems, and are they, number one, cognizant of that, and number two, are they allowing you the flexibility you need to make sure that you're properly defending TRANSCOM's digital systems?
Thank you, Chairman. First on what is U.S. Transportation Command doing, the cyber threat, I believe we're in our infancy as a nation in dealing with the cyber threat. All of us would probably agree that we couldn't foretell where we would be today with a cyber threat versus where we were just 10 years ago. And I'm concerned, as will all of us, of where we'll be 10 years from now. U.S. Transportation Command is doing an exceptional job of defending our own network, our own enclave. As we talked earlier this morning, we have some great cyber professionals who've won awards in how well we defend our network. On the periphery of that defense, though, lies 90% of what we do, which is on the unclassified commercial networks. And outside of that, we have commercial providers that are under attack every single day. So you might not necessarily have to attack my strong position inside U.S. TRANSCOM, but go after someone who provides us a service. With that, I'm concerned about some definitions that we need to get after, and that is, when I defend my network, how far out can I defend? What constitutes an attack on a commercial provider? What do they have to report as an attack, because the definition may be not as clear with every single person? Those are just a few. Because of that, I believe we're uniquely postured as U.S. Transportation Command to work both inside the military and outside with Homeland Security in bridging the gap between military capabilities and commercial capabilities. And that's where Cyber Command squarely fits. And Admiral Rogers and I, the Cyber Command commander, are tied at the hip. He fully understands our dilemma. His team is completely linked with ours, and they are great supporters.
Thank you. I know that it certainly provides you a number of challenges that you must deal with, and that we want to make sure the Cyber Command is cognizant of those and is there to help you. I think yours is a unique situation, and one that we want to make sure that you have the tools necessary to defend your systems, as well as understanding where the threats are from your customers and also from the industry that you work with. Let me talk about the Maritime Security Program, and I want to go to the Merchant Marine Act, and the U.S. policy there states the vessels of the Merchant Marine shall be operated by highly trained and efficient citizens in the United States. And I understand that as you implement the Maritime Security Program, there are about 60 ships there of the 78 total that are available to provide that Sealift, to provide that ability for us to move things around as necessary, to pre-position supplies. All those things are extraordinarily critical, and I can go through the numbers of what was moved during the conflicts in the Middle East, and it's mind-boggling what's been done there, the logistics of what you all have done, both in Iraq and especially in Afghanistan, with sometimes challenges to the lines of communication and trying to get our military hardware to ports in places like Karachi and others. A couple of the questions I have is concerning the MSP. To what extent are you looking at the program, not just today and the capability, but what the program needs to provide in the future, understanding the challenges that the industry faces both with capacity, that is in the ships, but also capability, and that is in the merchant mariners that run those ships. Give me your perspective on where you see us today, but also what Transcom needs to do to make sure the future is such that both the capacity and capability are there in necessary quantities to meet United States military needs.
Yes, Chairman. The nation is still a maritime nation, and our reliance on the maritime force to deliver what we call a decisive force. I can deliver an immediate force anywhere on the planet tonight, but to deliver a decisive force, it takes a fully fledged, competent maritime fleet, and that's what the MSP provides us. And in the future of the program, in the number of ships and in mariners, both are concerns. First, with ships. The 60 ships of the 78 is telling because we only have 78 in the entire international market for the United States, a maritime nation. That's, I believe, a challenge. We ought to have a dialogue about how important is a U.S. international fleet to the United States of America. I believe it's vital to moving military goods and hardware. And as you articulated quite well, we could not have done the last wars we've had without that decisive force being delivered by our maritime partners. As a matter of fact, as an airman, as a career airman, it kind of daunts me to tell you that it is the maritime force that provides that decisive army to provide force around the world. We're working very closely with the Department of the Navy to come up with a balanced program that will get after ship recapitalization and whether or not and how we recapitalize those ships and how long it will take. What we don't want to do is take away from building of other ships. And so we've got to have some leverage. Is there a part of it that will be maybe we buy some foreign-built ships to bridge the gap? Do we build new ships? All of it has to be factored into what the U.S. Navy is doing as well. On the mariners, without mariners, we don't have a capability. And I believe that U.S. credentialed mariners is important too. So I've been visiting some of the maritime colleges to ensure that those young men and women understand how much we need them, how much we value the credentials they come out of college with, and we need them to go to sea, and we need them to stay with us. And so it's important that we keep about 11,000 plus, is what MARAD tells me, mariners in the fleet.
Very good. Well, thanks for your perspective on where we are today, but also what we need to do in the future. And I agree with you. We need to have some soul-searching conversations about what both capacity and capability we need to build for the future. We know today it seems to be in somewhat of a state of atrophy, and we need to make sure that we are anticipating the needs in the future. So, General McDew, thank you so much. And Chief Turner, thank you. Thanks for your service to our nation. Thanks for all that you've done. We wish you all the best in your retirement. Please give our best to your wonderful family. I know they sacrifice as you serve. Please thank them. We know that service to our nation is indeed a family affair, and we appreciate your stellar performance and your dedication to this nation. Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll go to Ms. Bordallo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. General McDew, every service that has come before our committee has talked about the delicate balance between readiness and modernization in today's atmosphere of fiscal constraint. What primary, secondary, or other effects have fiscal constraints put on Transcom readiness, whether in terms of personnel or equipment?
Ms. Bordelli, the services have a daunting challenge. The first which Our Secretary of Defense has laid out some priorities of what the challenges are that are facing this nation. I would put at the top of the list fiscal. The threat of sequestration threatens directly the services, which directly threatens every single combatant command, because we are organized, trained, and equipped by the services. And we have great partnership with the services, but their ability to modernize and project that modernization forward and plan for it has been challenged by the up and down of the fiscal environment. I'll put it that way. So going forward, we have got to provide a stable budget. Then we work on the size of that budget. But a stable budget, predictable budget is very, very, very important. I'm concerned that if they have to make tough choices, ma'am, honestly, a tough choice between a new aircraft carrier or a new Sealift vessel, that's going to be an interesting challenge that will impact our ability to transport. They understand how important what we do here at the Transportation Command is, but they have to make some tough choices, and I don't want to have them to pit one against the other.
Thank you. Your command general has experienced a decreased ops tempo from the height of the war in Afghanistan. Now, if the demand for global transportation does continue to decline, how will the reduced workload affect overall readiness in TRANSCOM? And will our forces benefit from increased time to recover and train, or will the reduced contributions to the Transportation Working Capital Fund adversely affect readiness?
Yes and no. The decreased ops tempo can't be felt across the entire enterprise. I will tell you that we have some areas that are still hitting a high op tempo, and that's our tanker fleet. Our KC-135 and KC-10 refueling fleet is stressed at a point that near bending. And I'm concerned our ability to flex that force to another region of the world if we needed to. So that is still at a very, very high op tempo, as are some other smaller areas in the command. There has been a decrease of cargo flow throughout the enterprise, and that has been documented. And I'm concerned that we need to have enough cargo flow to ensure that our airlift industry, our gray tail, both gray tail and gray hull fleet that we own inside the services, and our maritime fleet have enough business to keep the capacity we'll need in the next conflict. Because as you know, the world is more volatile, and we're going to have a conflict somewhere. And we just need to make sure we can have that capacity that we'll need. And I'm concerned that too low a flow on the cargo will keep us from keeping that capacity.
That's right. All right, and I have a third question. As we continue the Pacific Rebalance strategy, what opportunities does this provide to broaden the skills and experience of our mobility force? Will the increase in transportation needs throughout the Pacific provide any additional challenges to TRANSCOM? And lastly, does TRANSCOM foresee the need for any increased infrastructure or capabilities in the region to help facilitate transportation operations?
You earlier acknowledged the fact that U.S. Transportation Command is a functional component command. I sometimes like to play with the words a little bit. We're a functional command, yes, but we have a global responsibility and global reach. And we are already in the Pacific, and we are working very closely with U.S. Pacific Command. We know that there are challenges with distance and time in that region. We know that we have some volatile actors in that region. So we are very, very closely aligned with U.S. PACOM and what they're trying to do in the region. There are some challenges there, but I believe the PACOM team is doing some amazing things in the region with partners and allies to give us bed-down options and access to ports. The challenges of cyber and the challenges of a malign actor forcing attrition upon us are some that we have to continue to concern ourselves with. But I will tell you, U.S. Transportation Command is already in the Pacific, and we understand the region, and our crews are ready to operate there.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you. And I, too, would like to go on record as wishing Chief Turner the best in the future. Thank you for your service, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Bordallo. We'll now go to Mr. Lobiondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, thanks to you and your team for the outstanding work and service to our country. As you can tell probably from some of the questions from the chairman and ranking member that the Maritime Security Program is something on our minds. Very keen that Many of us are concerned that if we don't pay attention to this program, that's something that probably a lot of people in America know much about, probably don't care much about. But if the wrong thing happens and some conflict breaks out and we don't have the proper infrastructure, we're in pretty serious problems. So you've talked a little bit about it. You've answered some of the chairman and the ranking members' questions, but is there anything else you can suggest that we can do to ensure the health of the maritime security program while right now not a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to it?
Congressman, I believe that MARAD, the MARAD administration, probably summed up the maritime security program and the interest in the fleet best when he refers to it as a three-legged stool. And there are three things that really can strengthen and underpin our maritime force. One is the stipend, the MSP that we're talking about. One is cargo preference. And we've seen some things over the last few years that have decreased the amount of cargo preference some of these industries have had. And the other is a robust international trade. The problem we have is, from my perspective, the only lever we have in the department and inside of MARAD is the stipend. That's the only lever that we can actually control. And so right now, that stipend of $3.1 million, which we ought to look at increasing over time, is keeping 60 ships of only 78 with us. And I'm behind anything that further increases our ability to make sure that we have the capacity we need to go to war. And I think that's a leg of the stool that we got to continue to keep an eye on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lobiondo. And I go to Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General, thank you for being here and your staff, and to the Chief Master Sergeant, congrats. It's a good feeling when you know you're going to retire. This is my last year, too, so it's a good thing. And I think you hit on it, particularly, we talk about the rebalance Pacific, but right now what's going on in Europe, and we're looking at, pre-positioning forces there, but trying to surge people there. Without the maritime lift capacity, my sons that are all in the Army are going to be kind of hard-pressed just because you can't put a Paladin or an Abrams, you can't carry very many on aircraft, but you sure as heck can on a ship. You mentioned 78 ships. What do you think the realistic, or what number should we really be striving to get to be able to meet the surge command, possibilities that we may have to face in the future?
You're right, Congressman Nugent, on the ability to provide that decisive force. Your sons in the Army want ships to be able to do that. The 60 ships that we have in the Maritime Security Program provide us that ability to have capacity in the time of need. What we owe is a continual look at what those numbers look like. And we work with MARAD, who really runs that program for us, to see what the industry will allow and what portion of the industry we can have in the program. Will we need all the ships in the program? Maybe not. But we need enough in the program to move those critical pieces of equipment. There are some that believe that we can rely on nations around the world to help us. And maybe we can. But history has shown us that, and the law tells us, that we must be able to move those critical components with our own indigenous forces. And so that's what the 60 gives us. And I'm willing to continue to work with MARAD and the services to ensure that we have the right capacity going forward.
Okay, so you really didn't answer the question. I'm sorry, General, but I was trying to get at, what do you think the force should look at? I understand, the 60 and the 78, but where do you think we should be striving to get to as we look forward in regards for this committee and in regards to appropriations in the future?
Sorry for kind of skating a little. I don't have an actual number in mind, but the team right now is we have a mobility review coming up in the fall that will try to get after those numbers. I'm concerned that we may need additional numbers only because we have had free movement through the oceans for the last few conflicts. We have not had to worry about attrition, and we've not had to worry about access to ports, and those threats that now can put the 60 ships in jeopardy. So 60, although it provides the amount of capacity we'll need, will it also provide the insurance against attrition.
Right.
And so that study and that exercise we're going to do in the fall is going to try to get after some of those numbers. I don't have an actual number in front of me.
I appreciate your candor on that. We talk about Sealift, but then we also need to talk about the ability to get our troops into theater. And I know the Air Force has limited capacity, and so we rely upon our civilian fleet to do that. My concern is that we're starting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we've started to depend upon foreign aircraft or transportation for our troops. And my kids have flown on a number of different service-provided aircraft to get to Afghanistan, to Iraq. Is that true that we're having to rely upon foreign aircraft carriers or aircraft?
I would never say never, but we have a very robust Civil Reserve air fleet.
Right.
That is U.S. Air carriers, a very robust industry, and we have been using them to the max extent possible. There are some probably subcontracts that may be going on out there inside of the CRAFT program that we may be using to augment that capability, but I don't believe that there's any lack of capacity in our CRAFT program right now that we ought to be concerned about.
So is that a problem for us, though, if they subcontract, if an American carrier subcontracts to a non-U.S. carrier that is not certified as a CRAFT?
They will not necessarily be certified as CRAFT, but they have their own certifications in order to be part of our program. In order to be used by that as a subcontractor, they have to meet certain criteria. I don't have it at the top of my head right now, but I'm not concerned about the carriers that are being used in the system today.
Okay. Because like I said, I have 3 sons that are in the military, in the Army, and I want to make sure that when they're transported, not my sons alone, but all of our sons and daughters that get put in a theater, that we make sure that their ride there is as risk-free as possible. So I appreciate it.
The vast majority is done on U.S. carriers as part of our CRAFT program, and it's rare that we will use otherwise. And so I'd have to look at those circumstances.
I appreciate that, General. And Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. Ms. Hartzler. Okay, all right. General McDew, I wanted to drill down a little bit on some of the comments that you made, talking about capacity. We talk about the 78 ships, 60 of which are obligated to TRANSCOM in the efforts that they have going forward. You spoke about the possibility, if the need was there, for the use of foreign ships. I want you to elaborate on that a little bit, obviously knowing that they would have to be manned by U.S. merchant mariners, citizens of the United States. And so I wanted to get your perspective on how MSP would work if you were to, I'm assuming, contract with foreign ships. Give us your perspective, too, on the Jones Act. Many times there's discussion about the Jones Act, whether it should stay in place or whether it should not. I think the Jones Act has a tremendous amount of utility, especially in situations as we face potentially with capacity within our Sealift ability. So give me your perspective there on foreign ships versus U.S. flagships, Jones Act, and then how do you manage within that realm, again, merchant mariners to establish that capability?
I may have been a little unclear
Sure.
when I first transmitted. In the MSP, it's all U.S. flagged, U.S. crewed ships. I posited that we ought to have a conversation as a country of whether or not we believe that's the way to go forward. I'm not advocating. But if we don't keep an eye on our capability and our capacity, we may find ourselves there by default. And I'm not advocating that either. But I mentioned that as something we ought to be concerned about as a nation, a maritime nation. So thank you for letting me clarify that a little bit. I'm not advocating that at all. I am advocating potentially as a bridge to capacity, and the ships that we have in some of our gray hull fleet and how we recapitalize some of those ships is maybe we can have some foreign built capacity in those ships as we work. These are the ones we keep in reserve, our ready reserve force. Can we have foreign-built ships? The stipend, as we've talked about before, provides our maritime industry a little bit of defraying of the cost of the difference between what it costs to run a U.S. flagged organization versus a foreign flagged. And the numbers that MARAD tells me recently, and I don't want to be completely quoted, but the 3.1 just defrays the cost of that difference. It doesn't cover the cost of that difference. And some would say that that difference is upwards of $5 million today, and it may be going up to $6, $7, $8 million in the out years, that difference in costs. And so that's where the true conversation about MSP and the stipend gets to.
I think, gotcha. Well, thanks for clarifying that, because I do think it's a discussion we need to have concerning, how do we make sure we have that capacity? How do we make sure, too, that we have the capacity going in the future? Obviously, aging fleet, and as you spoke of, the capability there to make sure we have U.S. merchant mariners to man those ships, I think is extraordinarily important. So definitely an issue we have to talk about. We put a lot of focus now on amphibious lift. Sealift is as an important component. In fact, there's an element of amphibious lift that is indeed a sealift component, although it is a military ship per se. It assumes the same role as a sealift ship would be in pre-positioning supplies and making sure that we can move things in the right way, in the timely ways that we need to. So I agree. I think your perspective there is extraordinarily important and one that we need to address on the House Armed Services Committee. So, Ms. Bordalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General McDew, a question for you. Transcom recently released the CRAF report in response to the FY16 NDAA. Can you relate how Transcom engaged with industry in developing the inputs in this report to Congress? And was there agreement generally, or are there still areas of disagreement?
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. The CRAF report, if I may step back just a second and talk about the industry. I believe that U.S. Transportation Command and our commercial aircraft industry in this country have a good relationship. There is no universal agreement in that industry about anything. However, I believe, I'm being a bit facetious, but if you get 20 some odd carriers in a room, you may get a little bit of disagreement. So I don't believe we have universal agreement, but I think we have good agreement that the report addresses their concerns. I think that we can always improve communication. And the disagreement we had going into that caused us to have to do the report in the first place, I think was purely a lack of communication and our lack of understanding about terms. In the report, we talk about block hours, and that's what the commercial industry uses to do their training, to do a lot of the financing. And we don't typically use that term in our business. So we may have been talking past each other when we talk about readiness of that fleet compared to the readiness of our Air Force fleet and the fleets we use. So we did engage heavily with industry. We let them see the advanced reports, which I think upset a few. We then changed the report and modified it to address some of their concerns. And I believe the final report, we included letters from many of the carriers. A couple of them still disagree with what's in the report, but many of them are supportive.
Well, thank you. That's good news. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bordalia. We'll now go to Mrs. Hartzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, it's nice to meet you. I feel like a fellow neighbor here, being from Missouri, and appreciate what you do. Of course, we're very proud of Rosecrans there and the C-130s and the airlift they provide there. So I hope someday to get over and see your base personally and tour it, but appreciate what you do. I guess my question is, as it relates to the planned Air Mobility Command Airlift Force structure, what is your greatest concern in providing airlift capabilities to support the defense strategic guidance and contingency operations to other combatant commanders?
First, you're welcome to visit anytime.
Great.
I've had a chance to go to Rosecrans on a number of occasions.
Good.
The amount of training, the professionalism, and what they bring back to particularly the C-130 fleet is remarkable. Yeah. There have been many folks that have said that the training they've gotten there is the best training they've ever received in their entire careers. So
That's great. I'll pass
Please
that
come out
on.
and visit us in the cornfields of Illinois anytime.
I'll pass that on. Thank you.
The Air Mobility Command force structure is of concern in a couple of regards. I'm a little bit removed from my last job as Air Mobility Command commander, but the capacity for the C-17, which has been a remarkable weapon system, the C-130, but more importantly, I believe the tanker refueling fleet is where our greatest need is. That airplane is 50-plus years old in the KC-135. It was old when I flew it 3 decades ago, so it's a bit older now. We will be flying it for several more decades. We built 700 of those airplanes in between 1957 and 1964. It's going to take us till the mid to late 20s to build the next 79. So that recapitalization effort must stay on track. And at the rate they're doing it, we're going to have to fly the current fleet of KC-135s 30 more years.
Wow.
So that's a potential problem. On the airlift fleet, I believe that our capacity is adequate, and we are just below what we need in capacity-wise by about a few airplanes. The Air Force is partnering with us to buy back some additional airplanes that they put in backup inventory to bring them back to active inventory. We believe that will get us back to the numbers we think we will need in most contingencies. Of course, as an aviator and a commander, I can use as many as I get my hands on, but I think that capacity will be sufficient with a manageable amount of risk.
Well, it's very, very important what you do to support the other aircraft and the missions being carried out. How has sequestration and future defense budget uncertainty affected MSC's commercial partners if they're needed for a contingency or a surge?
I believe sequestration impacts all of us. The biggest concern for sequestration is for me, it does impact MSC, it does impact most of our command, but mostly because it impacts the services. We rely on the services to organize, train, and equip the forces that we will need, all the combatant commanders will need in a time of war. Anything that provides the services with unpredictable budgets, anything that provides them with decreases their ability to modernize, decreases their ability to plan for a new C-17 replacement, to keep the KC-46 on track. Any of those things adversely impacts not only me, but then through me, all of the combatant command. So sequestration is not our friend.
Absolutely. I'm a member of the Budget Committee as well, and we're working very hard to try to make sure that you have what you need and that we make sure and replace the defense cuts that were scheduled a few years ago. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Mrs. Hartzler. I'll now go to Mr. Gibson.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And General, thank you very much for your leadership. Congratulations, and thank you for your service, sacrifices of your family. And I also see your hardworking staff behind you, and I appreciate them as well. A couple of questions in terms of this budget. Interested to know the commitment from the command in terms of revitalizing the global response force, and then if you could also talk to the European Reassurance Initiative, concerns you have with regard to your command's responsibilities thereof.
I just have to scramble to write because I have no memory anymore. First note, hardworking staff, they're more than hardworking, they're brilliant, and they underpin anything I'm able to do. And there's some great men and women at U.S. Transportation Command that underpin, I think, the power of this nation, and I always will take an opportunity to brag about them when I get a chance, so thank you. Revitalizing the global response force, it is something that concerns me because I've told my other combatant commander friends, whatever they do is what we do. And how they do it, how they plan for it, impacts what we can help them with. If they go into a cloak-filled room to provide a global response force but can't make sure it's transportation feasible, then we don't have a global response force. Our ability to project an immediate force tonight and a decisive force tomorrow is underpinned in the cornfields of Illinois in this country. And I think all of them understand that, and we're working very closely with each and every one of them to do it, including my friend at European Command. And that initiative is going to be transportation heavy to be able to move back and forth the forces we will need to provide reassurance to our allies, and we're ready to do it. I think it will also provide some cargo capacity to keep capacity in our maritime fleet, which is also important to this nation.
Just to follow up, in terms of the rotating armor brigade combat team, do you feel you have good numbers now in terms of what impacts that's going to be, how that's going to affect your ability to accomplish your worldwide mission in view of this new requirement?
I don't believe we have all of the numbers that we'll need until we fully understand the size, scope, and periodicity of those rotations. I do believe we have the capacity to take care of it and the rest of the world, but it depends on what the rest of the world looks like. If the rest of the world stays relatively calm and we're not putting large troop rotations through another region of the world, yes. If we have the capacity we have right now in the Middle East and we had to swing to another massive thing while doing those troop rotations, we would just have to make sure that we time it appropriately and see where we might assume some risk with some limited assets. The first one that will come to be a limiting factor is our air refueling fleet. That fleet will be a LIMFAC very, very quickly if we're swinging from one region of the world to the other, because we're using it so heavily right now in the Central Command region.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I expected that, and I appreciate the comment very much. I think that's really where the risk is. I support where we're heading on this. I think it's important for the reassurance. But when you consider the other requirements we have from the other combatant commanders and the uncertain environment, the volatile and uncertain environment, I'm concerned as far as commitments we're making, and then if we should have to do something in the Pacific that's rather significant, what would we still be able to accomplish our reassurance in Europe? So some of this we probably don't want to go into now. It would rather be classified, but just know that this committee, from a readiness standpoint, that's one of the issue areas, concerns we have. And so we very much look to you and your staff to give that fine point analysis on this going forward. And anything else, sir, did you want to mention?
No, that it's something that my staff back at Scott works on almost daily. We're in constant contact with each of the combatant commands. We have asked, though, that we look at some of the timing to ensure that we don't try to put all of it out all at once. If we can smooth flow it out and at least be as predictable as we can, I believe that we can accomplish most of what the European initiative will get for us and still underpin the deployments around the world.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And with that, Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. When I go to Mr. Peters. Okay, thank you. General, I wanted to talk a little bit about the DP3 program as we had spoken out a little bit earlier. I know the transition from the previous contractor to the new contractor didn't get off on the best foot. We got a lot of calls, as well as others, about personal property and the timeliness of it getting back stateside or even getting to forward deployed areas, wherever those folks may be. Can you give us an up-to-date perspective on where the DP3 program is now with the current carrier, the timeliness, the performance standards that are required under the contract, and how this contractor is performing?
Our global privately owned vehicle contract, GPC3, was something that I had to learn quickly about when I took command of U.S. Transportation Command, because as I tell my staff, you move goods and services for the military all the time, but when you move a family, that's something that really is extremely emotional, and we all understand it because we all have families who have moved around the world. And so this particular contract did not get off to a good start, but the movement from a vendor who had it for 15 years, transitioning to a new one is always going to have some challenges. But there was also a period of time where the new contractor wasn't allowed to get started because of a protest, so that further hampered their ability. And there's no other way to describe it but abysmal is how it started. But last year, this contractor moved 72,000 plus vehicles. They had 4 quarters of work. Their lowest quarter of on-time delivery was 86%. They had 2 quarters above 99%. I believe they've turned the corner. I've challenged my staff to say, one day we'll recompete this contract. We don't want to have this happen again. So I'm taking a briefing every single peak season. I will take a briefing. We should never be surprised that the peak season for moving people in the summertime. And surprisingly, Christmas happens on the 25th of December. We shouldn't be shocked by that at any time in the future, and I don't think we will be.
Thank you, General McDew. Are there any other questions? Mr. Peters.
I want to thank the General. I apologize. They scheduled 2 hearings at the same time for me, so I'm trying to run between both. And what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I have a couple questions having to do with the strategic ports and the use of them that we'll submit for the record. And appreciate, Mr. Chairman, you're having this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. We'll gladly do that. And any other questions that you might have, General McDew will submit them for the record, and as well as any other committee members. So if there are no further questions before this hearing, I will adjourn. General McDew, thank you very much.